Good evening. Welcome to Inside City Hall for Monday, September 22nd, 2025. I'm Errol Louis. We are less than 2 months out from Election Day, and the race for mayor is entering the home stretch. Democratic nominee Zohran Mamdani joined me this morning for a walk in Astoria, Queens, and a stop at a cafe. We had a wide-ranging discussion about his time living in the district, the key supports that he has received from top Democrats in Albany, what it would mean to become the city's first Muslim mayor, and much more. We recently took a similar walk with Andrew Cuomo, and I'm looking forward to doing the same with Curtis Sliwa and hopefully Mayor Adams. We begin tonight with the first part of my conversation with Assemblyman Mamdani. So you decide that there's enough going on and that you've got a chance. I mean, so strategically, you know that you can pull it off because you know how to run a campaign at that point. But what was for you personally, like, okay, this is better than being a foreclosure prevention specialist?
You know, I think it came back to the systemic nature of this. It came back to when I was sitting at the office and speaking to a colleague of mine, actually my supervisor, who had just done a report on home ownership in Queens and found that 1/3 of all purchases were being done by unnamed investors. It was a problem that spoke to tenants who were being priced out of their own neighborhoods. It was a problem that spoke to homeowners who, if they were delinquent on property taxes or water bills, would face a property tax lien sale. And all of this reckoning with the fact that it was Albany that often made many of these decisions around the state of the law and what protections would exist or lack thereof.
So let me ask you about the ultimate solution, right? We know you're pushing for the rent freeze for stabilized housing. To what extent do we have to reconfigure the basic math of how all of this gets done? I mean, I've been talking with a number of people, including your former classmate, I guess both assembly class and maybe high school class, Kenny Burgos.
Mr. Burgos.
Yes. Talking about how, look, if he says the problem begins and ends with property taxes, that if you're not dealing with that, which is like a 30%. Good morning. that if you're not dealing with
The young voters delivered us this election.
yeah, right. They get younger all the time, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not dealing with the property taxes, he says, you're not really dealing with the problem. You're putting, a Band-Aid on a broken leg, so to speak. What do you think of that? And is there room to try and get a big lever like taxes to sort of move incentives, have it passed down to the tenants, and really create some long-term, deeper affordability or even rent rollbacks?
There are a number of things that Kenny and I disagree on. This is one of the things that we agree on, is that the time has come for a change to our property tax system. And I say that as someone who serves on the Real Property Tax Committee in the State Assembly, as someone who has looked at this system, sought to introduce legislation to augment this system, and yet been told that the scale of this is one where the Assembly, the Senate, Albany in general is waiting for the vision of the mayor.
Okay.
And this is a mayor right now we have who said that he would fix the property tax system within 100 days of taking office.
That was in that 100 days promise?
That was 100.
He pulled it off the websites. I didn't remember.
100 days promise. And what we've seen instead is that he sought to defend the system in court and lost time and time again. Wow. The previous mayor put together a commission that released its findings on the final day of the administration.
Sure.
And I think what we see is that it's a property tax system that is widely understood to be inequitable, and it also has real ramifications around rental properties, as well as the ability to produce the mass scale of housing that we need to. Because a successful housing platform is one that speaks to all 8.5 million New Yorkers who call the city home. Rent stabilization, that applies to about 2.5 million New Yorkers. Home ownership, it's another about 1 million New Yorkers. Then there are a number close to maybe 2.5 for market rate tenants, and so on and so forth. And so what we need is a multi-pronged approach. Yes, we need to freeze rents for rent stabilized tenants for 4 years. We also need to take action on the doubling of insurance costs for affordable housing providers over the last few years. And I'm quite interested in looking at the prospect of something like Milford Street Captive, which is an approach to reduce those insurance costs. What could be achieved if the city intervened in a significant way? If we looked at the water bill and said, instead of the Adams approach of raising it to the highest it's been in 13 years, and the approach of supporting Con Edison's request to raise gas and electric by $65 a month, that we instead understood affordability to also apply to homeowners. And this goes back to my experience as a foreclosure prevention housing counselor. There would be a day when the city would release a list of all of the, how's it going? Have a nice day. There would be a day when the city would release a list of property owners delinquent on water and property tax bills. Right. And that day it would have their name, it would have their addresses, and I would speak to New Yorkers who would start to be harassed on that very day by people looking to buy their properties in cash. One client told me that they were being followed in the grocery store.
Wow.
And so what I did, sorry man, what I did was I built a list coming off of my experience working in local politics of what we call turf, where I would go and knock on these doors myself to ask them, did they know they could enroll into a zero-down Department of Finance program, get out of this property tax lien sale? And I met one man who only spoke Urdu, which I happened to speak. We had a conversation. He had no idea that this lien was about to be sold. No idea he was about to be put on a fast track for foreclosure. And it showed me the ramifications of a Giuliani-era policy that we have not only allowed but maintained, which we see that also has ramifications for racial justice in this city, where the city has been shown to be 6 times more likely to sell that lien in a black neighborhood than a white neighborhood. And so that is also the same part of the affordability agenda as freezing the rent, as taking on insurance costs, as going to Albany with a property tax reform vision.
So now, I mean, one reason the prior mayors have not been able to do it is, number one, it is complicated, right? And there are a lot of oxes to be gored and so forth, a lot of trades to be made. But the other part of it is that so much of the city's revenue comes from property taxes that ultimately they don't want to touch it. And I, in fact, was talking about this with someone who suggested, it might even have been Kenny Burgos, that a Mayor Mamdani is going to find the same kind of math, that to pay for a lot of the different things that you want to do, you don't necessarily want to start messing with the major source of revenue, which is property taxes.
Look, I think that we've allowed that kind of thinking to carry on for quite some time. And what it's left us with is a diminishing faith in government, where so many New Yorkers know that the system is unfair, that the system is inequitable, and yet it continues because, as you've said, the difficulty with which you would change it. And thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you. But I think that New Yorkers deserve a mayor who will actually try, who will go to Albany. I can tell you that, having been in Albany throughout the Adams administration, there was not much outreach being done on the question of property taxes.
Right.
And there will be winners, there will be losers, there's no question about it. And yet, to allow this to subsist it's part of why we are in the situation we are.
So is it fair to say that that'll be part of your whatever 100-day agenda and so forth?
No, the difference between myself and Eric Adams is I make promises I intend to keep, and I am not going to tell New Yorkers in 100 days it's going to be done, but this will be a part of our Albany agenda. And it will be a primary part. It will take its time, it will be difficult, but it requires continued focus, and that's what we're going to bring to it.
Okay. This is a remarkable strip with so many small merchants. As an assemblyman, have they sort of come to you with what their needs are? What have you learned from them that you might want to take to City Hall?
You know, that's actually where our office used to be. 2814 Steinway was our campaign office back in 2020.
Oh, in the height of the pandemic.
We put down, I think it was about $12,000, which was an incredible sum of money for a campaign just starting up. And then a few weeks later, the world shut down.
Right.
And then we actually transformed that space into the home of the Astoria Food Pantry. Because I saw on Instagram that a fellow historian was running a food pantry out of the trunk of their car. We said, here we have an empty office, please use it. And now they're actually further down there. They feed hundreds of families across Astoria every week. But what I've heard from so many of these small businesses, first and foremost, is, wa alaikum salam, how are you, habibi? Is the importance of actually conducting outreach to these businesses as opposed to waiting for them to come to you. there is a real sense in government of a kind of passive nature of a relationship with people around you. When you are at a district level like this, and you are able to knock door after door, knock business after business, you can hear about these issues. And some of these issues have ranged from concerns around SLA and actually getting their license. Some of them have ranged to issues with Con Edison, and just the ways in which people are being billed, and just the nature of that cost continuing to skyrocket. And what we've also found is that this is a symptom of a larger issue in New York City politics, where we have a team, for example, right now within SBS in city government called the BEST teams. These are business enterprise service teams. They are intended to serve small business owners. Today, they only serve 3% of those small business owners. And that's part of our vision to increase funding for that team so that the number of those served can skyrocket.
Sure.
Because what we see right now is many do not know of the services available to them. Many do not have a clear number to call when they are facing the kind of an issue. And oftentimes, when they're calling my assembly office, it's because systems have broken down. They don't know where else to go. The city needs to make it much easier for that to be the case. The last thing I've heard is the arbitrary nature of many of the fines and fees that these businesses face from the city. I've heard time and again from small business owners that it depends more on who the investigator is that day than what the violation is. And so that's part of our commitment to cut fines and fees by 50%. The de Blasio administration did it by 40. There's no reason we can't go 10 more. And a recognition of the fact that a $116 billion budget is not funded by a restaurant having to pay $25 a year for the right to sell a frozen dessert. The important thing here should be about compliance, not about punishment.
It is time for a break. Coming up, I'll bring you part 2 of my interview with Zohran Mamdani, where we talk about his recent key endorsements and what it all might mean for his agenda if he gets elected. Later on tonight, the third and final bid for a casino in Manhattan went bust today after a committee voted to reject the proposal. Stay with us. Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Before the break, you saw the first part of my wide-ranging interview with Democratic mayoral nominee Zohran Mamdani, where we spent some time walking through Astoria. Then we sat down at a nearby cafe to talk about how he plans to fund his ambitious proposals. We talked about rezoning in Long Island City and more. Here's the final part of our conversation. So I noticed as we were walking here to Mo Cafe that we passed Turkish coffee place, Colombian coffee place, Brazilian coffee, all kinds of coffee. But I understand there's something special going on with Yemeni coffee.
Well, we are sitting right now in Mo Cafe, and it's one of the many Yemeni coffee shops that have been born across the city. Just on this street, we have Mo Cafe, we have Mocha & Co., we have Haraz, we have just a few blocks over Kahwa House. These are all different Yemeni coffee shops that have in many ways provided a third space for so many New Yorkers. Because unlike coffee shops that New Yorkers have come to know, they don't close at 5 or 6 p.m. They are not geared around the workday. They are geared, in fact, around communal life. And so, especially during Ramadan, I would tell you that you should budget some extra time, because this is like the Muslim club. And getting in here will take its time, because this is where everyone is, whether it's at midnight or 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. This is a place for people to come and meet each other. And it's, I think, a reflection of how small businesses are such a critical part of a community, because they provide a place of belonging beyond just the home or the work or the way on the way.
Very interesting. I wanted to ask you about your, I heard that you run marathons.
Run is a strong word.
Well,
I participate.
I heard, yeah, participate. I heard that you've done it twice, and yes. I wanted to know when this happened, because we've been talking for a while now, and I was like, when did he do this? When did he have time to do this?
Blink and you would still see me. That's the pace that I was running at. I ran a marathon last year in November. I ran it with a T-shirt that said "Eric Adams raised my rent. Zohran will freeze it on the back." So that was at the beginning of the campaign. I ran it also.
I mean, but you really ran it. That was 26 miles. That wasn't just for like a little YouTube video.
26.2. Yes. Let me tell you, the 0.2 hurts. But it was one of the best days of my life. I've run the New York City Marathon twice now. I was set to run the Berlin Marathon. I had trained for months, and then the MTA announced that our free bus pilot was starting on the day of the marathon. So I stayed and rode the buses. But it is such an amazing way to see this city, and to see all the beauty and the breadth of this city and the 5 boroughs of it. And I think for so many New Yorkers, a reintroduction of this city to ourselves and also to the world. And I think often about the World Cup and how it can hold that same promise.
You trained for that? Trained
For the World Cup, or
no, for the marathon?
For the marathon, yes, I did train.
Okay, good.
And let me tell you, it's not easy running so slow because it takes much more time than if you run quickly.
Oh, interesting.
People
That's just part of it. Yeah, you do have to pace yourself, as they say.
Yes.
Let's talk about politics. Last week, you got endorsements from the governor, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the Senate Majority Leader. The obvious question is, does this signal an ability to get things done in Albany? And was that sort of on the agenda as you were talking with them?
You know, the agenda was always at the heart of those conversations. And that's what I appreciate so much about this support from Governor Hochul, from Speaker Hastie, from Majority Leader Stewart Cousins, is that it's an endorsement not just of me as an individual or as a candidate, but of the platform that we're running on. And the fact that these are, in fact, the partnerships that will be at the core of delivering that platform. Mm-hmm. And so much of what we've spoken about over the course of this race, it has roots in Albany today. You know, when we speak about universal childcare, the governor has talked about that as part of her vision. When we speak about fast and free buses, that is something that was delivered really with a lot of leadership from the legislature. And when we speak about increasing taxes on the top 1%, you can find that in the one-house budgets of both the Assembly and the Senate year after year. And this came in the same week as we received endorsements from Controller DiNapoli, as well as Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, who's also the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah. So I mean, when it comes to taxes in particular, the governor has said that's DOA, right? I mean, what was your conversation like with her, understanding that you're pretty far apart on that rather important issue?
You know, it was a conversation that understood that wherever there may be disagreement, it doesn't preclude us from finding places of agreement. And the importance of universal childcare, the importance of making the most expensive city in America affordable. And I've always said that the most important thing to me is that we fund these initiatives. I think the most productive and straightforward ways to do so are these two tax proposals of raising the personal income tax on the top 1%, of having the top corporate tax rate match that of New Jersey. However, if there is funding to be found from elsewhere that can fund the same initiatives, the most important thing is the funding of them.
Well, when it comes to other top Democrats, because there's an almost daily headline about, has Chuck Schumer endorsed him yet? Has, Hakeem Jeffries endorsed him yet? And I'm mindful. Well, first of all, are you courting them? I guess is one question. And then related to that is, I've seen with some top Democrats, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, they've said to other Democrats, look, you can run with me or you can run against me. Do whatever you have to do in order to win. And I'm wondering if that's part of the consideration as you're talking with these national Democrats.
You know, the conversations I've had with Senator Schumer and Congressman Jeffries, they have been conversations that I've appreciated and ones that have come back to that same focus of how do we make the city affordable and the recognition of the fact that we have many of the same constituents. Mm-hmm. And I think too often politics has been one where tension has been an innate part of the relationships between different levels of government. I mean, there was a while where the only speed it seemed between City Hall and Andrew Cuomo's Albany was war, to the extent where New Yorkers were told that the governor didn't even control the MTA. And we were left to wonder if it was the city, in fact, when we knew it wasn't. And what I've appreciated is there is an interest in working together. And for me, this is, yes, there are parts of these conversations about November. There's a lot of it also about January, mm-hmm. and making sure that when we get into office on January 1st, we are hitting the ground running with relationships that are ready to work to the benefit of New Yorkers.
Well, let me ask you a little bit differently. If the considerations that Senator Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are pushing for as the majority leaders of their respective conferences involve stuff that has nothing to do with New York, trying to pick up a crucial seat somewhere in the Midwest or something like that, are you comfortable with that as the rationale for, like, look, I like you, we'll do some great things together, but if we don't have a majority, there's nothing we can do. And getting to a majority means maybe keeping a little distance from Zohran Mamdani.
You know, I would let Congressman Jeffries and Senator Schumer speak for themselves in that. I would also say that I am so proud of the coalition that we built to get us to this point, because it's a coalition also of a number of constituencies that we were told to expect to never return to the Democratic Party. It's a coalition that was powered by young voters, that was powered by Asian voters, that was powered by tenants, many of the same constituencies that oftentimes are not looked at as having a likelihood of voting. And those are coalitions that can exist anywhere across the city, across this country. And I think it's important for us to build a politics that welcomes as many people into this tent so that we can actually deliver the thing that unites all of us.
And if somebody's not quite ready to get under the tent with you, is that a problem? Is that a deal killer? Is that something you want to spend time on, or do you just kind of move forward?
The most important thing to me is delivering the agenda. And if someone wants to work together with me on delivering that agenda, that's what I care about the most.
Some of my viewers have no idea what Islam is about, right? They haven't been exposed. Yeah. It's not taught in the schools, and they don't understand kind of what that means, where you're coming from. And I guess part of the burden of trying to make history, as you would be doing, is to have to kind of explain some of these things. So when you were sworn in the assembly, did you use a Quran?
We didn't actually have a swearing in of that nature, but that is something that would be part of my swearing in.
Right.
And I've often been asked this question of what does it mean to be the first Muslim mayor of this city? Because if we win the general election, that is what my status would be, as well as being the first South Asian mayor. And I often think about my grandparents, Yusuf and Kulsum, who really raised me to understand what Islam meant. And one of the key lessons I was taught from a young age was that to be a good Muslim is to be a good person. It's to help those in need, and it's to harm no one. And it was through them that I learned about the month of Ramadan, which is this beautiful month where most people know it as the month where we as Muslims fast from sunup to sundown. We don't even drink water, which is oftentimes a question that I'm asked. But for me, one of the most important parts of that month is the solidarity that it engenders, where at the end of the day, when we break our fast, we break it with those that we know and love, and we also offer it to those that we have not yet even met yet. Mm-hmm. And that tradition of iftar, of extending that solidarity to all, it's part of the legacy of this street, where when I first ran for assembly, we did a massive fundraising effort with an organizer in Long Island City. We raised about $70,000 to deliver out free iftar during the month of Ramadan at different mosques across this neighborhood, because there are so many people who fast all day and then they do not have any food to break that with. And yet we know that that's not only specific to Ramadan. As you and I were talking about, hunger and poverty has become a part of life in this city. Right. 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty. 500,000 kids go to sleep hungry. Food is something that is out of reach for too many. And that has to change. And the other thing I'll just share with you is it was my grandmother that told me at a young age that to smile is also to follow the teachings of the Prophet. And it's a sign of respect. And so from a young age, I was encouraged as what piety can actually look like takes many different forms.
Ah, interesting. So smiling is piety.
That's
I like
what
that.
you taught me.
I hadn't heard that before. Yeah. A couple of other questions. One is with the UN General Assembly in town, the question comes up about how the mayor of the host city is going to interact with the various world leaders. And I wanted to ask you actually about President Modi, because I saw you at one point at some forum said that given the chance you would choose not to meet with him. And that was over, I imagine, human rights abuses?
Mm-hmm. I was asked if I would have a shared press conference with him if he came to New York City, and I said that I would.
Okay. Given the opportunity, if you were, say, the mayor, would you want to talk to him, maybe even confront him face to face?
I've shared my criticisms of the policies of Prime Minister Modi's government, and I think policies that have been one that many have taken issue with over the course of time in the ways in which they seek to create a vision of India that doesn't include all the people of that nation. And I often think about the opening words of the Constitution of India and the vision that it lays out. And I know that also I'm looking to represent the entirety of New York City. Just yesterday, I had an incredible meeting with Hindu leaders across New York City. And we spoke about a wide-ranging set of topics. We spoke about small businesses, we spoke about Diwali, and we also spoke about that we may have disagreements as it pertained to Prime Minister Modi. And those disagreements do not preclude us from working together to the benefit of this city.
Okay. There are some pro-Modi people who kind of have it in for you, right? They've been putting out ads and talking all kinds of trash. So we'll leave that for the campaign trail. And I guess finally, there's been talk about a massive rezoning of Long Island City, which is the next neighborhood over, that is in your district. I've been struck by how I think this is the 4th or 5th attempt to try and get this done. And I spoke with Council Member Wan just the other day. And we're still at a point where people are saying if it's not if it doesn't include X, Y, and Z, if it doesn't include everything we want, then it shouldn't pass, which strikes me as a formula for going another decade without the necessary rezoning. I was wondering what you think about all of this.
You know, I'm always excited by the prospect of building additional housing and the prospect also of, I think, 14,000 additional jobs. And yet I take very seriously the concerns that Councilmember Juan as well as State Senator Gonzalez have brought up, where this is something that should be coupled with investments in infrastructure. And also these rezonings provide you with an opportunity to bring together continuity within a community that has often been split apart. If you just look at the landscape of the parks in this neighborhood and how right now they are disjointed, there is a part of this push that is to unite those parks and ensure continuous waterfront access. And so these are things that I will examine very closely, and all of this amidst a larger context where we are in an affordability crisis, we are in dire need of additional housing, and that housing has to be built all across New York City. And I'm excited to be the mayor that finally delivers that.
Okay. We will see you out on the campaign trail. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Real pleasure.
Yep. Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.